Welcome to UKAI Business Show. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions, helping business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host, UKAI Kachidori.
Welcome back, and thank you again for joining us. And today we have again on the show Brian Laundrie, the gentleman we had last week talking about financial planning, the myth and misconception that people have around this subject. But today Brian is going to be talking about his main expertise within this industry, which is insurance. Brian, thank you again for joining us today.
It's really nice to be back.
Incredible. Now, if you're a business owner and you really struggle with understanding the whole concept of insurance, how it plays a role in your business, what you should be doing, this is the topic you want to be looking at, and you want to be listening to Brian today, because he's going to make things that seem so complicated so plain for you so that you get started. Now, Brian, for those who missed out on our show previously, they want to know who you are. Would it be okay for you to just share with our audience who you are, how you got involved in this industry, and the things that you do for clients today?
Yeah, of course. For the past 15 years, I've been working in more advanced case financial planning. I've done a lot of work with the physician market and business owner market, as well as families. I think my area of expertise is strategic planning and financial strategy, but I do focus on the insurance side of the business. So there is not a day that goes by that I don't, look and read at people's existing insurance contracts, legal documents such as shareholders agreements. So it's one of those things when you do it every day, you become more fluent with the subject matter.
Absolutely. And you are the president of BL Financial Consulting, and you really work with a wide array of financial advisors, and you are really well positioned to help business owners who are new to this whole subject and who are looking to really speed up their understanding of financial planning, and mainly in the insurance part of it. Now, I know you've done this for the last 15 years. What sort of results have you produced, for individual or business owners that you can share with our audience today?
That's a good question. Just to further your point, I think what's 70 to 80% of all of my work is a result of referrals from other financial advisors or investment advisors who may not be as comfortable with the subject matter. The other 25% are people who source me out independently.
Wow.
But, it's from a result point of view, I think the really interesting part of having that specific role is, unlike most people who are always trying to find the next best client, when you work with a multitude of advisors, you get to meet everybody's best client. So as a result, you tend to see what was once complicated, you see it more frequently, and you start hearing similar objections and similar concerns. And all of a sudden, like anything else with repetition, you become more comfortable. So that's been a big aspect of my business. You asked me about the results. I think the not talking about financial results, but being specific with the results has to do with the level of planning a business owner requires, because they do have a family involved.
Yes.
Most business owners, now being presumptuous, but I am one myself, I have two lives. I have my business life, which is my baby, and I take care of it, and I have to spend a lot of time. And I have my wife and my kids at home, who I need to focus on and spend time on and care about them. But it's very interesting. If something were to ever happen to Brian, it's going to have a significant impact on my family.
That's right.
And most people do understand that, but it's strange how there's a disconnect between financial planning, specifically insurance, and that subject matter.
Absolutely. And one of the things I find when dealing with financial advisors is, the subject of insurance, and many of them seem to avoid talking about that. Is that the case in your observation?
Yeah. What happens is, and it's not unusual for any one person to become an expert in their subject matter.
Right.
And I had recently, when I say recently, the last few years, I've done seminars for a room full of investment advisors and financial advisors. I also did the same session about a week after for a room full of accountants.
Great.
And what was interesting was the primary reasons why either accountants or advisors don't talk about insurance is first, they are not comfortable with the subject matter. It's not exactly a subject matter you get yourself involved with every day. Second, you're not very comfortable with the products or the contract language.
Right.
Most professionals don't like putting themselves in a position where they can't answer the questions.
Well, obviously, because you don't want to look incompetent in front of your clients, do you?
Well, so what happens is a lot of these advisors attend a lot of sessions, a lot of education sessions, and I'm there and I see the effort. It's not that there's not effort. There's just not experience and repetition having the conversation. And it's difficult. It's like anything, it's difficult until you do it every day. And I find when I've worked with these advisors, sometimes 2 or 3 years into the relationship, we have a very honest conversation about me backing off because they now have the comfort level.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic.
Incredible. Now, given that background, in your experience of working with a business owner, how does this, uncomfortable situation affect business owners?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and business owners, generally speaking, if you have a small business,
Yes.
some of those businesses have partners. A lot of those businesses have partners. And one of the very first questions I ask in any meeting with a partner of a business is, do you have a shareholders agreement?
Right.
And surprisingly, not as many do have shareholders agreements as you would expect. More often than not, when I ask to review the shareholders agreement, it's actually a draft of an agreement that was never signed, so it really doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So that's the very first question. So in that context, within a shareholders agreement, it gives all of the direction about what happens if we want to buy the other partner out. What happens if there's a death? What happens if there's a disability? And in the well-written shareholders agreements that I've seen, they're very clear about, if my partner were to predecease me, here's what's going to happen, and here's how the money would exchange, and here's the valuation. What's interesting is it's never funded. So, just because you have a business that's worth $1 million doesn't mean your partner's surviving spouse has $500,000 to buy you out.
Right.
So, in the context of insurance, the shareholder agreement, which is legal planning and very strong planning, is great, but without the funding, it's hard to execute when that event actually arises. That to me is a very common, shortfall.
Right. Just to further on to that, maybe you could explain this in the context of tax planning and business succession. If I'm a business owner and I'm looking to get insurance, where do you come in?
Well, there's 2 different functions for insurance. And when I say insurance, I'm mostly speaking about life insurance. Okay, there are other insurances that I don't want to ignore.
Right.
So in Canada, from a tax planning point of view, in a corporate context, there's 2 places for life insurance.
Right.
The first place is traditional. It's shareholders agreements. It's to fund a temporary problem with some very affordable term insurance, and it allows us to fund agreements. From a more complicated tax planning point of view, corporate insurance allows us a vehicle to tax shelter money in our corporation. So where we're accumulating money in a holding company for retirement or for savings, it allows us to capture a very tax efficient vehicle, not only to grow that money over time, it allows us more tax efficient options to create income later on. And from an estate planning point of view, ultimately when somebody or a family passes, that business is deemed to have been disposed for tax purposes, creating a tax liability. So a lot of the work that we do is, let's do a lot of future value projections. What do we think that tax bill is going to be? And insurance is the most cost-effective and tax advantageous product to use to deal with it. So it's interesting. Insurance, it can go a lot of different directions, but often when it's talked about in that context, most people who I speak to don't know it can do these sorts of things. They're very familiar with I die, my wife gets money, but they aren't familiar with the more advanced tax structure.
I can understand why, because their personal advisors normally, don't talk much about this because it's a gray area for them.
Well, yeah, if you're an investment advisor, and I'm speaking now in generalities,
Right.
and your focus is client relationship, managing the investments, looking at the markets, generating rate of return, and doing what great advisors always do. What what I see tends to happen is we don't ask for things like shareholders agreements, and we don't ask for things like your will, and we don't ask for things like your corporate structure, which is one of the things I built. I built a visual map of your structure because understanding those things help create a conversation about succession. When you have just investment assets, when you're a business owner, it's not just those savings; it's also your business it's going to contribute to your overall planning. So you start skewing down a different subject matter. And again, if you are comfortable with managing a client relationship and being a wonderful advisor and managing investments, it's difficult to go down a subject matter that maybe you're not as comfortable with through repetition or experience.
Incredible. Well, if you're just joining us, I'm joined on the show here by Brian Laundrie, who is an expert when it comes to insurance, especially for business owners. And if you've got any question that you have, you can send us your details, and Brian will be able to respond to them. Alternatively, reach out to Brian on the social media. We will be providing you the details at the end of this conversation. Now, Brian, in your 15 years of experience as an insurance expert, what are some of the common trends that you have seen?
Well, very interesting trends. First of all, there's a real misconception out there, and this goes for all families, not just business owners.
Right.
There's a misconception that life insurance is expensive, whereas it's very affordable, especially, and we're talking about term life insurance. But the trend that we're seeing is if you were to purchase, let's pretend $1 million of life insurance for a 40-year-old male or female, 25 years ago, that price was probably 30% higher.
Wow.
People are living longer, right? With medical advancements, with diagnostic and treatment, it's not like an incidence of cancer or a stroke or a heart attack. It used to be a death sentence, and not to be insensitive, but it was very difficult to recover. So life insurance would pay claims, therefore higher price. What we're seeing now is people are surviving, which is great. And as a result, the cost of life insurance tends to be coming down because people are living longer. On the flip side, because of that exact logic, we're seeing products such as long term disability insurance that protects your income, or critical illness insurance that pays in the event of cancer, heart attack, or stroke, or even things like long term care insurance, which protect if you can't perform a couple of the activities of daily living. Those products, not only are they increasing in price, I think we're just having a difficult time. And I say we, insurance companies are having a difficult time pricing them because we're seeing the incidence of diagnostics improving. So, how do they reprice a product when almost medical advancement is moving faster than the insurance industry? So that's been a major trend. And just one last point of that, in my experience, most advisors, although they understand where life insurance fits, it's pretty self-explanatory. Very few actually go down the road of the living benefits, the long-term care, the disability and critical illness. So if that's the trend of the population and they're not talking about it, it's a concern.
Indeed, and there is also this concern that insurance is sold, not bought. I think you are well positioned to explain that for us.
Well, it's fun. It's interesting. If my phone were to ring right now
Yes.
and a person says, Brian, I want to buy some insurance, my very first question is, what's wrong? Because usually something has happened either to them or
Yes.
somebody close to them that's created this need to act. More than I think LIMRA, which does a lot of statistics on the insurance industry, has suggested that over 40% of the population has insurance on their top five of things to get done, but they never do it. And it goes back to the subject matter. It's not comfortable. They don't know who to call because their advisors don't seem to know about it. And there's this idea that again, insurance is sold by insurance salespeople, which I think may have had some truth to it years ago, but I think it's really turned the corner. So yes, it's sold, it's not bought. People don't call begging for it.
Indeed. And if you are a business owner, listening, really need to pay particular attention to what Brian is saying here, because most of the things that we're covering here, we had a previous conversation before we jump on this one, and I thought, gosh, I need to put this in place. So, Brian, tell us, what are some misconceptions of insurance for business owners?
I think it always starts with tax planning fits. I think business owners tend not to think about it, to be honest with you. I think maybe the misconception is that, I have a shareholders agreement, I have a growing business, I don't need insurance. I have lots of assets, I'll be fine.
Okay, Brian, I've got this question which I got from one of the people that was listening to the interview recently. So, what are some misconceptions of insurance for business owners? Something like what prevents them from acting on what seemed to be obvious?
I think what prevents business owners from acting on it is their professional advisors aren't pressing the issue.
Right.
If your most trusted advisor is your financial advisor, your investment advisor, or your accountant, everybody stays in their lane. So if nobody's asking to review your shareholders agreement, well, who's going to bring up the funding? If nobody has a comfort level in insurance, further to what we've talked about, who's going to bring up the subject? Because again, they aren't. And I think it comes down to your professional team. And in my experience, that professional team is not comfortable in the subject matter. So I would say less than a misconception. I think there's a gap in the planning. And regrettably, it has a pretty significant impact on people's lives when things don't go as planned.
Indeed. So, if a business owner is listening here, really needs to consider having somebody on their team who is an insurance advisor specifically on this subject, so that, at least they have all their cards looked at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spend a lot of time, speaking to accountants and lawyers and advisors to help educate and let them know that there's resources available.
Right.
I think a big misconception, going to that last question, is insurance people traditionally have been very much salespeople. They show up at your door, knock on your door, and you're harassed until you buy something. I think the transition, certainly where I reside, is insurance is a tool that we use for more advanced planning, and it makes a great deal of sense. And I think when the logic makes sense, the solution becomes sort of obvious. I think maybe the misconception is somebody's going to walk in the door with the solution already in mind without really understanding the problem.
Absolutely. I like the quotation there. When logic makes sense, the solution is obvious. It's very, and again, as a business owner, if you have everything, before you to decide, it's much easier to act upon it. Brian, a lot of people wants to put these things in place. Really, if there is somebody listening right now and they don't know where to start from, do you have a set criteria you can advise them on to the things they can look out for, or where they can go?
Well, the good news is it's a very simple process. If you aren't sure, usually the problem is you don't know where to call. So if you send me an email or send your advisor an email saying, I really want to speak about insurance or more advanced planning, that's the trigger that creates work. For me, there's no cost of a discussion, and certainly there's no cost to review what you already have. I mean, the idea is we're here, or certainly I have a business where you give a lot of value before you ever think about what the solution is. And when people reach out to me, I ask the questions: what's your corporate structure? What's your shareholders agreement look like? Send them to me. Let me review before I even bring a solution to the table.
Right.
So again, ask your advisor: do you work with an expert? Are you the expert? You haven't asked me for my shareholders agreement. Think about why haven't you asked me? So again, it's a small world. To ask for somebody to give feedback is as simple as going to a website and finding an email address, which you were kind enough to provide.
Indeed. And assuming that they have been presented with several advisors who say they are insurance advisors, particularly, do you have a criteria that they can use in determining whether this person is right for them, or and not to go with the other person?
Here's the rule of thumb.
Right.
Every single person that I meet, it doesn't matter what age, it doesn't matter what their family circumstances, it doesn't matter if they're high debt or high asset, every single person must have a conversation. In my experience, nobody is talking about it, and it's been years since anybody's reviewed anything. And when I get into that kind of conversation, I don't think I've ever had a meeting where the client hasn't got something out of it. So when it comes to looking, at your client base, for example, don't assume ever, because the worst thing that can happen is your client's significant other calls you and tells you something bad happened. And make no mistake about it, that's part of my business. And I think when I'm done a meeting, I always feel comfortable that if that phone call ever happened, we've had an honest conversation on the backdrop of math, and whether people decide to do something or not, it's going in with a full educational backdrop. And that's my own philosophy.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. As we come toward the end of our time here together, Brian, on our previous conversation, I think when we were talking about financial planning, you told me a story about the GoFundMe.com. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, I was talking to you about this because this was a personal situation I had to encounter about a month and a half back.
Yes.
So obviously it's the holiday time, and I was on my Facebook page, posting pictures of my children. And there was an advertisement or a share by somebody who had a GoFundMe page, and it happened twice in a week. The first GoFundMe page was, my husband, 41 years old, unexpectedly didn't wake up from his sleep. We're trying to raise money to help, his wife. The other one was so-and-so has been diagnosed with something, and now we're, doing a GoFundMe to raise money for treatment. And I guess my story to you is I struggled with those posts. It actually created an emotional response in me I wasn't expecting. And the response was frustration and anger. And it took me a while to reconcile it. Why am I feeling this way? And I guess it comes back to I can only have this conversation as many times as I do. And there's still families out there who are GoFundMe victims to a certain extent. I think it's a great service. But for young families, have the conversation, and you'll realize this stuff's not that expensive given the magnitude of the problem and the risk. And I don't know how to deal with it because I don't want to be on Facebook, sharing negative experiences or piggybacking very terrible news. But I wanted to share that with you and your listeners because it's difficult when you're in the business and you receive those phone calls and you see those posts, and that's a family that 6 months ago, a year ago, you could have helped them, and you're just not given the opportunity, and it really created an emotional struggle for me. So I thought I'd share that with you. Get your family and your friends, whomever, just make a phone call. Go one step further. You don't have to do anything, but understand the risks and recognize the costs are not what you think they are. And often, any pre-existing medical issues that you think are going to prevent you, for example, if you're a cancer survivor, don't think that insurance companies won't insure you. You don't know. Pick up the phone, find out more.
Indeed, absolutely. And it's better to be prepared really than, to be sorry later on.
Well, what no conversation has ever hurt anybody, right? Have the conversation, educate yourself, understand the pricing, and then make a decision. If at that point the decision is we don't want to proceed, we don't believe in it, it doesn't fit our budget, it doesn't matter. I feel better as a professional, and they go in with their eyes wide open. What more can you ask from people, right?
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the reasons we brought you on the show, to highlight the importance of just getting started. Make that initial phone call, and you never know how you can be helped. And it's better for you to be proactive than to be reactive all the time. Now, for those who wants to connect with you, Brian, where can they find you?
You can always Google me. My name is Brian, and my last name is Laundry. And you spelled my last name the same way you wash your clothes. So it's pretty easy to find me. I do have a website, blfinancial.ca, and you can find me on LinkedIn, which, again, Google will take you to. So I'm pretty available to communicate with.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. And once again, are there any final thoughts you would like to share with business owners to get them started, or maybe to to take?
Honestly, keep listening to this podcast and similar ones like it. It's hard to get the message out. There are professionals out there that they're willing to take your call. These are great platforms to just dangle some valuable information. So my advice to business owners is, like anything else, put it on the to-do list, put it in the schedule, and move forward. No more procrastinating.
Absolutely. And results comes from action. Inactivity is actually an action in itself, but you want to be doing something towards your financial stability for the future, for the safety of your family. Again, thank you so much for being here with us, Brian. And
I always enjoy it.
We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's very cold over there in Canada, you were mentioning.
I'm literally sitting out looking at my window, and it was a bit frosty. It was a minus 21 degree wind chill. So, nothing was better than getting here, sitting at my computer, and sitting with a portable heater under my desk. Hope that doesn't stay this way forever, but you're right. Not a fun day.
Incredible. Well, we appreciate you taking time to be with us and to share your expertise with our listeners here. And we want to wish you a successful day today in whatever you're doing.
Thank you.
And again, if you just joined us, I was just talking to Brian Laundry, an insurance expert over there in Canada. He's here to help you do that. For more information, just click the link below, and we'll be very happy to help you get started and get your life on track. With that said, have a great day, everyone, and I will talk to you again very, very soon. And goodbye, Brian.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to UKAI Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.ukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.